find a way.
Kelli, so glad to have you here today. I am curious. You finished law school?
Yes.
And you must have just thought, what is the hardest, most thankless job I can do with this law degree, right?
Actually, I was doing the job while I was going to law school.
Oh, so you have no excuses.
So no, I have none. I went to law school Saturdays and Sundays for 3 years while I was assistant city administrator for a small community. So I knew really what I was getting into. However, my plan was to get out of law school and get out of government, go to work for a private developer or private law firm representing developers. And honestly, it maybe seems thankless, but it's city management, government in general. If you have that public servant heart, is the most rewarding thing you can do. So after being in it for so long, I just couldn't leave it.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's encouraging to hear, because I see all the bullets that you take for every choice. You're going to take a bullet, right?
Everybody happy. That's for sure. You bet.
Yeah.
But it's worth it, because you know you're doing the right thing and the impact it has on not just the people today here, but our kids, our grandkids, and everybody moving into the future. So as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, even though there's people always kind of criticizing and lobbing darts at you whenever they can, it's worthwhile.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
So you were in law school and you were working full time. So you were going on the weekends.
Yep.
Were you also a mother at that point?
Single mom. Yep. Single mom, 2 kids.
Tell me more.
Yeah, it was hard.
I bet.
It was, luckily, Hamlin University at the time had a weekend law school program. It was a 4-year program, and you spent really 8 to 5 Saturdays and Sundays for 4 years at the school. You couldn't do remote learning at that point. And it was the only way I could go, and I knew I wanted to go. And I was lucky enough to get a scholarship that paid for half of law school, which is a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
So just jumped in, and luckily, my kids and I would do homework after dinner in the evening.
So how many kids did you have? How many?
2.
You had 2, and they were young. Were they really young?
Yep, they were in elementary school at the time.
So, what drove? That's a bold. It's a bold, ambitious choice.
Yeah. Well, I tried to do it when my youngest daughter was 2. I wanted to go to law school. I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Why?
Because I thought I could make a difference. I thought, again, being in the development realm, I started my government career as a planner. I thought I could create and help developers and cities kind of meld together and create better projects. Because I knew the government side, I knew the regulation side, and what could and couldn't be asked, and how things could really be worked that way. I formed good relationships with developers, and I knew that side. So I wanted to be on the other side where I could help the developer push back when they needed to, or really work to get a better project for them and for the community.
Right.
So yeah, my kids and I, we would sit at the dinner table and do homework, and I would put them to bed, and I'd go do more homework until about 10 o'clock, which was my cutoff. I couldn't last. I lived alone, so my books were in my bed.
Yeah.
I would set my alarm for 2 or 3. I'd get up, I would study till about 5. And my trick was then I could sleep for another hour.
Wow.
And then, because I knew if I took the summer off, I wouldn't go back. I just knew that would happen. I took summer classes. I ended up doing the program in 3 years. So I was able to get out.
So this was your routine for 3 years.
Yeah.
And raising kids by yourself.
2 kiddos. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I had some help from my mom. She was able to help watch the kids when I needed to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, looking back, it was a lot, but you're in it and you just do it. You know what you have to do and you do it.
Well, you do it if you believe in yourself. Like, there had to have been 1,000 different points where you could have stopped.
Oh yeah. You think you're crazy and
yeah. Yeah.
You wonder why,
but you really have to be convicted about what you want to do in life in order to make that kind of the sacrifice that you made.
Yeah. And I didn't look at it as a sacrifice. It really was more of a challenge.
Yeah.
it's, am I strong enough to do this? Can I do this? And I wasn't willing to not.
Where did you learn that?
I don't know. This is going way off, but I didn't grow up with the silver spoon type. I moved out of the house when I was 16.
Yeah.
Between my sophomore and junior year of high school. And so really it was starting there, I think, going, I'm responsible for me. And the way I show up, the people that I was mad at or I didn't get along with was to be better, to do better, and to show them I could. And so I did. And I did, and I did, and I did, and I'm grateful for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So were you on your own at 16?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. And then you finished high school, you went on to college. Did you have any significant mentors? I mean, 16 years old is a pretty tough age for a female in particular.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're filled with self-doubt.
I did not have good mentors, actually. I had good people looking out for me. I shouldn't say it. My orchestra teacher was probably the best. She kind of looked out for me. She didn't even know I was living on my own. Nobody did. I hid that. But yeah, she was probably the one that kind of pushed me in other directions a little bit. No, I didn't have a lot. But it was because I was just busy making sure I could eat and had a place to live. So it was just put your nose down and do. But yeah.
What a story.
Well, yeah, sorry.
Super. It's inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That is no small thing or story. So here you are, city manager, Bristol, Tennessee. I know when the city was interviewing, there was a lot of enthusiasm about the pool of candidates because when you're a city that had a city manager for quite a while, they'd never gone through this process. You never know. Right. Like who's going to be interested in this position. It's so important. Yeah. But I remember there being a lot of enthusiasm about the talent that was interested in this. So I'm glad the birthplace of country music interested you.
Yes, I am too.
What drew, like, I'm curious, like you're from Minnesota.
Right.
What drew you to Bristol?
That's a story in and of itself. So my husband now, back before I knew him, had come to Bristol. He was in the power sports industry. And he had brought some friends, got to be friends with one of the NASCAR drivers, brought some friends down for a race, and just fell in love with Bristol. The downtown, how kind everybody is, just the feel of the community. And years later, when we're together, it was during COVID, and we were out, took a trip, and just thinking about where do we want to retire to? We knew it wasn't Minnesota for just a host of reasons, but so we kind of went through, what do we want? We love music. We love the outdoors and hiking. We love the smaller town, but having things to do, just history and a host of things, mountains, all of that. So we actually, when we were on this, just a long weekend getaway, one of the things we did is, and I still have it in my desk drawer, we have a little hotel notepad. And we wrote down all the states that we would like to move to. And then on the flip side, within those states, the cities that we would be interested in. And sure enough, Tennessee was on our list of states, and Bristol was written on the back piece of paper. Obviously, I'm not retired, so things happened. We both had some health scares, and I was part of the International City County Managers Association, where there's jobs that get posted, the big city manager type jobs all over the country. And Bristol popped up and kind of went, well, Pat, what do you think? And it's like, well, try, just see what happens. And so I put my application in, and then I got a notice that we want you to move on to the second round. The application process is a lengthy process.
Yeah, I bet.
It's not just you throw your resume out there and wait for somebody to call you. So got the notice that, yep, you're moving on to the second round. Like, okay, well, again, do I really want to put the time into doing this? Yep, let's do that. Well, and then it's a video interview. I mean, it's like this.
Well, it's an important role.
It is, and it is. And finally, it got to the point where I'd made it through all of that and was invited to come and interview in person. So then it's like, what are we going to do? If would we really take this job? You know, would we move all of our life across country to take this job? And we both just went, you know, if it's meant to be, it'll be. So let's just go and see what happens. And so we did. And he asked me after the interviews, just point blank, he said, so what do you think? And he was fully expecting me to go, yeah, I think we'll be fine in Minnesota. I think, surprised myself and said, I feel like I'm supposed to be here. Oh. This is where we're supposed to be. Huh. And sure enough, you know, that was before ever knowing that I would get an offer, but it just worked.
Well, when you're in that position that you were in and you're looking at cities to possibly manage, you got to be looking at it as like, is there enough here to work with? You've obviously got a vision for what you want to do, and is there enough there to work with? What did you see in Bristol that made you think there was potential here?
There's a significant amount of research that I did because I had a very good position in Minnesota where I left. We were doing great things. Actually, we were doing a public-private partnership for a new city hall and mixed use with apartments.
Wow.
Well, that had never been done in the country
that
before.
Sounds complicated.
And we were within weeks of moving into our brand new space. So there was a lot of research and thinking and all of that. But really looking at the community and the potential. And I've said this before, Bristol is like a bubble that's ready to pop. And I wanted to be here when it popped. Wow. We are on the cusp of so much. And to get to be a part of making all of that happen and making us, we're great. We're great. But we're just ready to be so much greater.
What do you think, what is it that is there that you see that others might not see? Like what is behind that? What is behind that bubble?
There's this energy, and a lot of it is the people. And there's a few different pieces with the people here, I feel. One is the true connection to the community. I mean, they're Bristolians. You know?
They were born here, have roots here.
Raised here, yes. However, they still accept and welcome in other people and other ideas and new things. That isn't very common.
So that's unique.
That is very unique from what I've seen, what I've experienced. That is very unique. And then you've got these people that are coming in from the outside. And they're coming in with all of these great ideas and these things that they've experienced elsewhere. And then now we have the opportunity to meld those together. And because there's this openness amongst everyone, it really provides an opportunity. Yes, you'll always have people that complain or question or say, oh, that'll never fly here. We can't do that here.
Yeah.
But you've got this bigger sense of, yes, it can. We can do this. We've got this. We should be doing this. We should be doing that. Why aren't we doing this? You read it on social media all the time.
Does that come from, so what you're talking about is culture. And when I've always thought of Bristol culture, you think of like the country music, like the amenities, like the physical stuff. I guess living here so long, I take what you're saying for granted, and I bet all of us do. It's the intangibles of the culture, the hospitality, and the roots.
And you need the hard things. You need the geography. You need to be the birthplace of country music, you can't create that. You can't manufacture that.
Yep.
The mountains, the river. You can't make those things. But to be able to take full advantage of all of those, you need that culture. You need those people that are open and willing and wanting to really make those bigger and share those.
Where do you think that, have you gotten a sense of where that comes from? Is it the current leadership? Is it having been, Bristol is kind of unique because it's a small town, and our business has been hospitality. This massive race 2 times a year has been such a huge part of the economy. The festivals. I've always thought Bristol's really good at throwing big events. Yeah, it's really odd, right?
It is for a small town to be able to do those big, huge events. It's very odd.
But I'm wondering if that ties into what you're saying about that openness. And
I think it does. I don't know, prior to Bristol Motor Speedway being here, what the community was like. But I think when you have such a large venue that's bringing so many people to the community either embraces it or they shun it and they regret or dislike having it there.
Yeah.
And luckily, Bristol has embraced it. And that then I think has spilled over to embracing other things, rhythm and roots, and all of those big festivals, the big events that now are very common.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the big starters of that. I don't know if it's just the Appalachian culture. I don't know because I'm not from here, so that's hard for me to say.
Yeah, but what you're describing is not consistent with like the reputation of the South or Appalachia. Like it's not, we don't have a reputation for being open-minded, but you're right. Like that is a real asset of Bristol, and why that is.
It is huge. And you hear people that come in for the races or come in for events talk about how welcoming everyone is. Yeah. And all I can say is I felt it.
Yeah.
And
wow.
It's significant.
Yeah. So what about the hard infrastructure? Like what did you see about what we have here that maybe we don't appreciate?
Well, I think the geography first. And we do take with Steel Creek Park, and we do use and take advantage of the natural amenities that we have. So that's a good thing. I think the downtown is beautiful, and we do focus on that, but there's more that we can be doing and more that we're trying to do with really refurbishing and bringing more to that area. I think obviously we're Bristol, but we're Bristol, Tennessee, and we're Bristol, Virginia. And that state line and how we use that state line in the middle of our state street, how unique is that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And the fact that we get to market that.
Yeah.
Does it create some unique challenges? Certainly opportunities to have two cities and two states sharing their main street, certainly, but the opportunities far outweigh any of the challenges that we have with that. Yeah. So. Yeah. It's almost forced cooperation. Like when you have a neighbor across the street, like you have to get along and you have to brother and your sister cooperate. I also think being historically the smallest of the Tri-Cities, Bristol has always had to punch above its weight and kind of lean into creativity. And they can't just be bureaucratic and compete. Like we've always had to be clever, you know? Yep. And for us, I think it's more about relationships and how do we leverage than for the other cities, because we have to. Yeah. To punch above our weight, we have to be able to leverage and use those opportunities where we can find them. Yeah. So it sounds like you've seen a lot of cities. You are well connected in the industry of American cities. Sounds like Bristol has a lot going for it. There are a lot of cities that would like to be in our position, but then I'm sure you have ambitions of more, of right? And I think a lot of I get a sense that often people think about city management and they think of bureaucracy and they think about just turning the wheel. And maybe that was true a generation ago. I don't know. But to me, in 2025, you can't just turn the wheel. Right. Like cities, it's a competitive world out there for cities like Bristol, right? It's interesting. You can just be bureaucratic and not really want to do much. And there are cities and that's what they want. And that's what they do, and they're fine with that. I couldn't work for a city like that. It's just not my personality. But there are still cities where status quo is just fine. Don't rock the boat. Don't bring anything new to us. And this is elected officials, city managers on, through the community. That is certainly not Bristol. It's not the community I work for, either of the communities I've worked for in the past, because it's just not, I don't think, typical.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's on the scale, there's varying degrees. You can be really stuck in bureaucratic and not wanting change at all, and then you can be out there doing amazing things. I think we're closer on the amazing things aspect. I think we don't take, well, this is how we've always done it, or we can't do that, we're government. No, those aren't good responses.
And that's not something that you had to create.
No.
That was here.
It's been fostered. I've fostered it. But with our staff that are here, it's been here. Yeah. And our council and the community, again, I think it's this underlying bubbling piece. And I've been able to get to be a part of making it boil harder, right? But it's an opportunity that, luckily, because we are smaller, it's easier for us to do that. Whereas the bigger the community, the harder it is to change course. The ship doesn't turn as fast. But our staff have been very, very excited to be able to think outside the box and look at doing things differently, and look at partnership opportunities and things that we've wanted to do for a long time, but maybe couldn't for one reason or the other. It's like, well, let's take a different look at that. Let's look at what's our end result, and maybe the path is just a little bit different to get there.
Yeah.
But at least we're taking a path now to make progress to get there.
You said what drew you to this career is the difference that you could make. And it's like generational change. Like where Bristol is now is probably the result of decisions that were made 20 years ago.
100 years ago.
100 years ago. Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot at stake on the decisions that we make now.
Yes.
And you talk about so many cities that are okay turning the bureaucratic wheel. And Bristol has chosen not to do that. When you look out into the future 50 years from now, what do you see happening to those cities that are just content turning the wheel? Like, what are the stakes? What are the stakes of this?
Well, they're losing their population. They're going to lose their people.
Yeah.
You know, especially our young people that are graduating from high school and college. If there's not opportunity for them, and not just job opportunity, but, you know, entertainment opportunities and just quality of life opportunities, they're not going to stay. So they're going to see an out migration, which impacts everything. It impacts your budget. It impacts the services you can provide. It impacts your infrastructure. You get blight. You get all of those bad things start to happen. The problem is a lot of times they start happening so slowly that by the time you realize it's been 20 years or it's been at least 15.
It's too late.
And it's almost hard even to pinpoint back to why it happened.
Yeah.
But if you can, it's usually then too late, or it's really, really difficult and expensive to fix it.
Yeah.
And we see that with a lot of really old cities. You see those people leaving because the amenities are no longer there, or the infrastructure hasn't been kept up. And you can't get that back. It's so hard to get that back.
I'm wondering if the stakes are higher with the demographic trends that we have now. Like before, the birth rate was so high that even if a city like Bristol didn't grow, like it would replenish its numbers, right? But now that's not the case. Like we're just having less babies. And if you're not growing, you're literally dying from one generation to the next. Is that like a thing?
Yeah. And to lose population like that.
Yeah.
You're not getting them back.
It's real. Like
there's fewer people to have more.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, you can't get that back. So now the only way to keep your community and grow your community is to bring people in. Well, the only way to do that is make it an attractive place to be.
Yeah.
And that's so much of what we're doing, to the point where we are short housing. We need housing, all sorts of housing.
Yeah.
And that's really something now that we have to focus on. But what a good problem to have, because I'd much rather have too little housing for the people that we have than so much housing because we're losing all of our people.
Yeah. Yeah. Because 20 years ago, the problem was blight.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing investment in properties that I never thought would be invested in.
Yeah.
In Bristol.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but the stakes, like the way you articulate it, it's like, what is the KPI? Like, what is the key performance indicator over time? Maybe it's how many of our kids can we retain in Bristol?
Right. Or have they leave for 5 years and then they come back.
They come back.
Bristol's so great. They experience what's out there beyond Bristol,
and then come back.
Oh, Bristol's got it going. They've got it's got everything I need. It's that perfect combination of small town community with all of the amenities, performing arts, athletics, the natural beauty, everything that I want. Great schools for my kids to go to. You name it, Bristol's got it. That's our KPI right there.
And you can name those things. Like you just name them off the top of your head of what people are looking for.
A lot of them.
So we're talking about what, 25, 30-year-olds moving back to Bristol? Yeah. Like that's the indicator. And if they're moving back, Bristol has a healthy growing future. Mm-hmm. If those kids don't move back, now we've got to acquire other people's kids. Like I'm putting it in like the most simple, basic terms, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot more expensive and difficult.
It is. And I think there is where your community starts to pull apart.
Yeah.
Because bringing other people's kids in, that's great.
Yeah.
But it's not like bringing your family,
because they've got roots.
Got those roots here.
They're going to stay here.
Yeah. And they're going to be the cheerleaders for the history and the vision for what could be, because now their kids are going through the system that they went through, the school system, or, the sports program, or whatever that might be. We also have all of the older folks, the retirees that are relocating here as well.
Yeah.
And that's great. And I think they bring in a whole element to our community that we can tap, and we do, as far as ideas and vision and experience elsewhere.
Yeah.
But those kids coming back to Bristol is a great indicator.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot now. I've really been trying to pay attention when I talk to folks, and I do hear about a lot of kids. And I do saw
too.
It yesterday, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Daughter's just graduating college and she's coming back.
Yeah.
Those types of things. It's like, okay, we're doing something right.
Yeah.
We're not perfect, but we're doing something right.
It's not easy to do, right? Because it's a big world out there, and there's some amazing places to live.
Yeah. And people should experience that. I'm not saying people should never leave their hometown.
Yeah.
But the fact that they do go out there and they do experience all of those amazing places, but Bristol's still home. And they still, when they get to the point where they want to settle down, they want to come back here.
Yeah. Do you get a sense that the city government and the people as a whole they see the world this way? Like they're seeing their function as building Bristol as a place to keep our kids here and attract new people?
We try very hard for all of our staff to see where they fit into making Bristol amazing.
Yeah.
Because I've never really explained or talked to them about that part
Mm-hmm.
with the kids coming back. But we do talk a lot about, why every aspect of the work that we do impacts people's desire to be here, and Bristol being such an amazing place to be.
Yeah.
And it's every single position, every single one is critical to that. And some of the people where they wouldn't even think that it was.
Yeah.
Whether it be janitorial staff or, public works maintenance staff.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are the most important.
Yeah.
Because they're doing the things that people pick up on and that show that we're better than a lot of communities.
We hosted that huge pickleball tournament in the summer, and it was nationally televised, and we felt like we were at the center of the world. Fox was here. Flying overhead. Bristol is really cool.
Yes.
But you know what the number one impression that Bristol made on that, and it's not the reason they're coming back, but it was front of mind, is they said the hospitality of the maintenance staff.
Oh.
And the way that they were so responsive and so problem solving.
Yeah.
And this is a tour that, like, they don't come to Bristol's, they go to LA and New York and Toronto.
Yeah.
Like, and they were really struck by it. And so, like, those customer facing people are so important.
Yeah. I love hearing that.
Yeah. No, it was so cool for me to hear. Like,
and these are, for the most part, folks that have grown up in Bristol. They are very proud of our community. They're very proud of our city and what we do, and they should be.
Yeah.
And
but not all. Clearly, not all cities have that sense of pride, and so it is something that we probably take for granted here.
Yes.
And but it was cool. You named several things that were really important, and you've kind of framed this in terms of keeping our kids.
Yeah.
You named several things. What do you put at the top of that list? I know that's a tough question.
That is a tough question, because every day it's something
else
is at the top of the list. There's so much, and that's the benefit of my position, is I get to be involved in all of it.
I bet.
So to put one at the top, I don't know that I really
What are a
could.
few?
For me, it's our downtown and what our offerings are there. It's culture. It's what do people get to do after work or after school?
Yeah.
I think our schools are critical. We have to have a good education system, or it's just, that's our, that will be a downfall no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't care what other offerings we have.
Yeah.
The fact that we've done a great job at economic development and industry, it gets lost a lot because it's not glamorous. We've got big industry coming. So that impacts everything else.
Yeah. I want to talk about how that happens behind the scenes, because I don't think people really understand the grind that goes into that. Yeah. But when you talk about downtown, how important is it to have a physical downtown space as part of the culture? Like, I guess you can have a city, a healthy city, without a healthy downtown, but it's got to be hard, right?
It is hard. And actually, the city I left, we did not have that. We had a main state highway running through what was the downtown, directly from the interstate to Minneapolis. So we had no core downtown. And we tried everything we could to create. You need to create a space where people come and gather. People come and enjoy and communicate with each other. That downtown just is that space. And to not have that, I mean, cities pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to create those spaces. So we have that. And not only do we have that space, but it's historical space. It's beautiful space. It's lively space. Exactly. And then you add the fact that it's two different states, and you've got all of this tourism, based on that. It is something that so many communities would give so much to have, and we have it.
Like, downtown, the business of downtown is hard.
It is.
Like, cities have to invest in that, because it's not something that, at the place Bristol is right now, like, the private investment is probably not enough for downtown, right? You guys have to supplement. Yeah, it is hard. Luckily, we have Believe in Bristol, the downtown, the Main Street organization, and they do an amazing job. But it is hard, and businesses don't always make it. Yeah. And so when there's an empty storefront, that impacts the other businesses. And then people wonder what's wrong with downtown because there's an empty storefront. And blame it on the city manager. Well, oftentimes, yes, they do, actually. It's never mind the fact that, they had a family issue happen. Or, it doesn't matter. It's your fault. Right. Yeah. And that's okay. And it can never be perfect because it's this thing that's already there. So we can't create
the perfect parking plan
Yeah.
or the perfect buildings that suit everyone's needs, the perfectly walkable, bikeable, whatever location. We're working with an infrastructure that's been there for 100, 150 plus years and trying to infill and update without negatively impacting all of that history. And you're right, the city does have to. The cities, both sides, do have to provide investment and a lot of support for that. I think we should be providing more. The funding, there's a lot we could be doing but can't.
Yeah.
But we are really trying, and I think it's a noticeable impact down there.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, when I went to college here, and gosh, I tell people all the time, like when I was in college 30 years ago, there was no reason to go downtown. Like there were antique stores and boarded up. There was literally no reason to go downtown. And now it's like this, it's a really great downtown, but it's not easy. Like it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like, and so what do you see? What do you see as the next step for downtown? Like what would you like to see in the next 10 years?
We are actually in the process of doing a couple things right now for downtown that will not take 10 years, but I think will have a significant impact. And they're all in very early stages and they could completely shift, but hopefully they won't. So the vacant lot that is on Shelby, right next to City Hall, or the courthouse, that was supposed to be a development site. That didn't happen. So now we're looking at making that a public event venue, an open air that can be just open space that people come and eat lunch at or hang out at, but it also can be a venue space for the city. So we can have concerts that can hold 3,000 to 4,000 people. We can have food trucks come in. We can do a farmer's market in there that's bigger than where we're at now. There's a lot of things that we can do there.
Why is that so important, that being able to have 3,000 to 4,000?
When we do our music series downtown, there are acts that we can't bring in because we don't have the space. They draw more people than we have room for.
So you're limited. Like you can only, you can't attract the acts you want.
Yeah. So we would just want to bring more people to those types of acts.
Right.
And again, more people downtown, more people eating dinner before the show, and more people shopping or staying downtown because of that. So that's one. We are looking at creating an arts space. So right now, we don't have any gallery space. We don't have any display space. We don't have any maker space downtown anywhere for artists. So that's something that private sector doesn't do typically. It's not a money-making. Back up a little bit. Private sector does most things better than government. More efficiently, cheaper, better than government. So I'll own that right up front. This is not one of those things that private sector typically gets involved in. So we're trying to work that through. So there's building downtown that the purchase will go to the city council on February 4th. And hopefully it will house some city offices, but also art space.
So it'd be a structure owned by the city that was like an incubator for artists. I think we look at Asheville as kind of a model for growth. It wasn't many years ago where Asheville and Bristol were not that different. Like Asheville was just like any other town, and then it just took off. Yeah. And I when you look at Asheville, it's like, what is it? Well, the geography is similar to ours, the location is similar to ours, but they did have there was a soul to Asheville that emerged around art and creativity. Yeah. And it was in that physical arts, that art district, which tragically is gone after the flood. And it like hurts my soul. Yeah. Because you can't replace it, like, but I guess what I'm getting at is like, that's the sort of thing, like it's difficult to do an ROI on it. Like it's probably not going to be a revenue generator, but it could be a massive contributor to the culture.
The culture, and it's not going to be a revenue generator for that facility, but hopefully it will be a revenue generator for everyone else downtown. And that's our goal, is how do we help those businesses all thrive and do the best that they can do?
So I'm curious. Like this is a significant idea, both of those things that you said. But you have to, you're tasked with actually taking these visions and making them reality. Talk to me about how that happens and how that's leadership, right? You take this idea, it may not even be your idea, it may be somebody else's idea. But you take that idea and you make it real, you make it happen. How do you approach that?
With a really open mind.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest thing. Neither one of those were my idea.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that. But being open enough so that people come to you with good ideas, that's the first step.
Oh, wow.
Because if you aren't open to listening, nobody's going to come to you with ideas. They might have the best idea in the world. They're not going to share that. And
I bet that's magnified in government too, right?
It really is. Yes. Because why would you stick your neck out there?
Yeah.
There's no incentive to stick your neck out there.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But creating that culture of there's no dumb idea. And let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to go back to my previous position when we did the big City Hall project. Again, first one really in the nation. We had a great developer partner and working so closely with my community development director. And it just, my mantra was, we're going to say yes until we can't. We're going to say yes until we hit a wall that we can't get over. And being the conduit between the ideas and kind of vetting and making sure everything makes sense, and then the elected officials and the public. And sometimes it won't work, and there's going to be a reason that it doesn't work. But then we're going to know what that reason is. And if it can work, we're going to keep going, and we're going to keep seeing, okay, what will this look like? What could this look like? That event space, completely not. Well, I guess it was a group think, brainstorm kind of on that. It was meant to be an interim use until a development came. But then it's like, we could really make this something special. And that was a lot of just on the whiteboard, what could we do here? What do we need? What are we missing? And most of those ideas were not mine. They came from staff and council.
But you see your role as creating the environment where people can come with those ideas and run with those ideas.
And then I get to vet them. And I get to
you must get 1,000 ideas a week.
Oh, it's wonderful.
So what do you do? Okay, so walk me through that. Like you get all these ideas. It's your role to vet them. You've got to allocate resources. Which of these ideas get time? Which of them get money? Yeah. Like how do you do that?
A lot of talking, a lot of meeting with folks, and
is it a small group that you trust, or is it like?
So our department heads are really kind of that level where we bounce things off of and talk a lot through. But then I will also go to different staff meetings within the departments. But a lot of the idea bouncing is kind of at the department head level. But then usually there will be something bubbling, and then they'll come talk to me individually to just see if it even is worth bringing forward. And it's nice because having that attorney hat, one of my favorite things about being an attorney is it's the contracts and it's the puzzle, right? If you do this, what does it change here, here, and here? So being able to put all of those puzzle pieces together And I get the benefit of having the holistic view. I get to, I know what's going on with police, fire, public works, community development, economic development, you name it.
Yeah. It's a lot of leadership. It sounds like a lot of storytelling.
Storytelling, conducting an orchestra I like to relate it to that.
Yeah.
Because really there's so many different layers and different people and different pieces. And when it's all working the way it's supposed to, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. When one's off, it's really not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the better you get and the bigger the orchestra, there's always a weakest link, right? So it never ends.
Dealing with that. That's for sure.
It never ends.
Yeah.
I love the idea of say yes until you can't. Like that's and that's been my experience with Bristol. Like don't just the perception of government is like no, because no is the easiest thing.
It's the easiest answer.
Right? Like, and that's people's perception. That has not been my experience with Bristol at all. It's like, let's see if we can figure out a yes. Yeah. And that's really, I really appreciate that about Bristol. But it's also got to be tough because you have limited resources. Mm-hmm. It's also a very fiscally disciplined red state culture here that is small government. So that's got to be a challenge of balancing like all these ideas, all these vision and long-term investment with the reality of keeping government small. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think my philosophy is fiscal conservative as well, which sounds odd when I start talking about the projects. And I'm talking a lot with our council right now about staffing on our staff pay and things that cost money.
Yeah.
So for me to say I'm fiscally conservative probably doesn't feel like it a lot, but there's so much that we can do that isn't expensive, or we can find partners to do it efficiently. The other part is a lot of what we do, we're doing because it's more cost effective than what we're doing now. And our staffing, we're doing department analyses with all of our different departments right now. We just finished fire. Our staff were significantly underpaid. And so we went in and we corrected that. It was a significant amount of money. And the question was, well, how can you afford that? And my honest answer was, we can't. But we can't afford not to more than we can't afford to do it. Because every time we have a firefighter walk out the door, it's $75,000 to train a new one. So looking at it holistically like that, all of a sudden, you have to be, these are taxpayer dollars. We want to be the best fiscal stewards of those dollars as we possibly can. And we do an incredible job. And we should.
Yeah.
But you can't just look at it as dollar in, dollar out. You have to look at it as dollar in today means you're not spending $3 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's an education piece that we have worked hard on in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And you do these projects, this art project, like you said, the ROI is not going to cash flow itself. Hopefully it comes close, and there's things we're going to do to make sure that we manage that. But when the businesses down the street are doing better, that's great for them, but it's also money in the taxpayers' coffers. So there is an ROI that's outside of just this one brick and mortar facility here. But that's where it's hard to explain to a taxpayer or to someone at a meeting, because it's really intricate and it's a deep discussion that takes a long time.
Messaging is hard.
And you can't message that in a 30-second soundbite or a little blurb. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And people are upset that you're spending money, so they're not listening anyways. And getting over that hurdle is really, really challenging. We have great staff that help us message, but there's only so much you can put out on a one-page flyer.
I think it's the hardest. It's the hardest thing for any organization, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit. It's so hard because it's hard to get people's attention long enough to really sell your story.
Right. And understandably, there is a distrust of government. So any
for you guys.
certainly anything we do or say is looked at with skepticism, and I understand that. I don't blame people. I will say local government is the closest you're going to get and the most impactful and the best controlled, but it's still government.
Local government probably gets the least amount of attention, and it's probably the thing that probably affects our quality of life more than anything else. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Yes.
The decisions that you guys make really make a difference. And it's long term, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like our kids are going to feel that. Maybe not me, but it's really important. It's really important stuff.
Mm-hmm. It impacts every day.
Yeah.
Everybody, every day, now and 100 years from now.
Yeah. And it's not about what ROI that the art ecosystem or incubator creates. It's about really is that going to be able to keep more of our kids here?
It's the community, it's the culture, and it's our future.
Yeah.
And that's where it's a blessing for us as government. We don't have to think about that as a private business would. Mm-hmm. So we have a little more latitude.
Right. You don't have quarterly. Yeah.
Right. We have to show a positive impact.
Yeah.
But the positive impact doesn't have to be just to that one business, to that one board of directors.
Yeah.
We have to show a positive impact to the community as a whole.
Yeah.
So, but we are very cognizant of that. We won't do things that won't show that positive impact.
But hearing you say that makes me think there's so many incentives for local governments to play it safe. Mm-hmm. Council members are up for election every couple years. Yep. Probably the safest thing would be to not stir the pot.
Vote no.
Not to take.
Don't raise the taxes.
Don't raise the taxes. Don't make any bold choices. So there's got to be that pressure. And like you say, there's no real upside incentive for anybody to take risks.
Yeah, it's true.
I've never thought about it that way. But you've got to. So you just have to. You have to fight that almost like gravity, right?
We call it the hard right. You have to do the hard right.
Yep. Tell me about that.
It's easy to say no. It's easy to do the easy thing, right? Mm-hmm. When no one's looking, when nobody's ever going to know, it's easy to just say no or to just do the simple thing. But it's hard to do the hard right. When you do the right thing, it's almost always harder to do. There's more steps. It impacts more people. It's difficult. But it's the right thing to do. Wow. So that's what you do. You do the hard right all the time, every time, period. And I have to give our city council so much credit. We have an amazing city council and they do hard rights a lot and it's tough and they do not have to, but they do it. And that trickles down. Totally easier not to. Yeah. But they see the opportunity and what could be, and they're willing to do that hard right. And that trickles down to me, and then it trickles down to the department heads, and it trickles down to the other staff. It's truly that culture from the elected officials all the way through. And that's critical, because if they're not doing the hard right, why should anybody else? It's really hard to inspire and encourage a staff of 400 plus people to do the hard right day in and day out. Do the right thing when nobody's looking, nobody's going to know. Yeah. If you cut this corner over here, they're still doing it because they know everybody's doing it.
What do you think equipped you for leading that kind of culture? Because I think you probably that none of that you just described is easy, and it takes strong leadership to have that kind of culture.
That's a good question. I really don't know. I think it's an inherent need.
Yeah.
Just this burning desire to make the best.
Yeah.
The best.
Is it the same fire that was burning when you were 16?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I do. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Because you're only here for a short period of time. You don't get a lot of years on this earth.
Yeah.
You darn well better make the best of it.
Just hearing your story, it doesn't sound like you've chosen the easy choices.
Yeah, probably not.
Along the way.
Probably not.
So it's really cool to hear you talk about that hard right, and like that's not easy. I'm really glad that you're in Bristol making those tough choices.
I am too. So.
And I think we can keep more of our kids here.
I hope so.
And that's worth the risks and making the hard rights.
We got good stuff going on here, and it's going to keep on going.
We'll keep fighting the good fight. We really appreciate you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.